What if I could show you how to instantly spot every hard-coded number in your workbook without touching a single formula? This matters because when you build Excel models, putting in a single hard-coded number in the wrong place can throw off your calculations. Yet most people still hunt through cells one at a time, turning what I think is a 10-second check into a 10-minute chore. So today, let me share techniques that will help you find hidden numbers fast. And each technique I'm going to show you is going to be more powerful than the last. My name is Victor, and after helping thousands of Excel pros work smarter, I can tell you that this first shortcut is a real eye-opener. And if you've used it before, just let me know in the comments. Here's the situation. I'm working with Excel on the desktop. I've got this spreadsheet with financial data. I need to make sure that the formulas are actually formulas. So like this cell here, that's a formula, this is a formula, this is a formula. And this should be a formula, but it's actually hard-coded as 685,000, which you can see up here in the formula bar. Now, if you look at this table, it's hard to tell without clicking on every single cell whether there's a formula or just a number input. And a quick hack is to press Ctrl and backtick. Now that means we see every single cell's formula. At a glance, you can see if there's a number, like here, or if there's a formula like this. And you can even see if there's a hard-coded addition to a formula like this 25,000 at the end of this formula. And in case you haven't used a backtick before, you normally find it on the top left of full-size US keyboards, just below the escape key and above the tab key. And you press Ctrl backtick to toggle this off and on again. Now the problem is, you still have to read every single cell to spot inputs and hidden constants like this, because they're not highlighted. So let's move on. In level 1, we're going to make those hard-coded input numbers jump off the page, or at least stand out in blue, by turning to Excel's built-in highlighter. Press F5 or Ctrl and G to open the Go To dialog. Now you could either hit Alt and S or just click on Special. In this Go To Special window, choose Constants and deselect Text, Logicals and Errors. So that leaves us with just numbers that are constants. Now press OK, and all the hard-coded values are selected. You can color them by going to the Home tab and then clicking on this Font drop-down menu to change the font color. Now I'm going to pick blue, but you can choose any color you like. And there you go. Every hard-coded number is highlighted. So this one and done highlighting saves you a ton of clicking, but it's static, meaning if you edit or add numbers later, you'll need to rerun the whole process. So pressing F5, going to Special, selecting Constants, and then deselecting Text, Logicals, and Errors, and then clicking OK. What's more, it still doesn't highlight those hard-coded additions to your formulas, like this sneaky little 25,000 that appears in cell C8. And it's those little hidden numbers that can cause your calculations to be wrong. So how about we level up to an automatic solution that works even when your worksheet changes? In level 2, we're going to automatically flag hard-coded numbers as soon as they appear, so you don't have to manually highlight them like in level 1. So we're going to select the whole sheet, but there's a smart way to do this, which is to click in this top left cell here to the top left of A1. And then we go to the Home tab and click on Conditional Formatting and click on New Rule. Now we'll use a formula to determine which cells to format, and we'll enter this formula down here inside the formula bar. Equals and open bracket, not open bracket, is blank, open bracket, A1, close bracket, comma, not, open bracket, is formula, open bracket, A1, close bracket, comma, not, open bracket, is text, open bracket, A1, close bracket. And next we click on this format button, and in the font tab, we can choose a color, like the blue we had before. Click OK, and OK again. And now every hard-coded number is automatically going to be turned blue the moment you type it. So for example, I'm going to replace that formula with 50,000, and you see immediately it turns blue. Let me undo that with Ctrl Z. So this set and forget conditional formatting rule helps you to keep an eye on all those constants, but it still can't identify those special hidden constants like this 25,000 that's inside cell C8. So how do we quickly find hidden constants like that? In level 3, we're going to turn to a secret weapon. Up till now, we've used Excel's built-in features, but when it comes to real customization, we need VBA. This stands for Visual Basic for Applications, and it lets you extend what Excel can do. We're starting simple in level 3, but by level 7, you'll have a fully working solution that highlights constants, shows formulas with internal links in green, external links in red, and spots hidden hard-coded constants like this sneaky little 25,000. Let's start by pressing Alt and F11 to open the VBA editor. So on the left here is the project panel, and you'll see a list of the objects in this workbook. And scroll down and you'll see there's a folder called modules. I'll expand that and double click on the one that says L3 for level 3. In this code window, we see the code that turns the non-formula cells in the current selection a blue color. It starts with the keyword sub, that stands for sub procedure, and ends with the keywords end sub. And we can write VBA code like this, VBA code like this, just like typing into a Word document. Except it's got to be formatted in the right way to make sense to Excel. And the editor automatically changes the color to blue, black, and green depending on what you've typed. In this case, I've already written out the code, so we can straight away just go and read it. Now everything you see in green is a comment, so Excel just ignores it. It's just here to make it easier for ourselves to understand what's going on. But before we dive into the code, let me show you how this thing works in Excel. So press Alt and F11 to return to Excel. We'll select Arrange to highlight, then press Alt and F8 to bring up the macro dialog box. So a macro is just a name for an automation that we've written in the VBA editor. So we can choose Format Selection Level 3 and then click Run. Now it says non-formula cells turn blue. We'll click OK, and we can see that in fact it has done that. All the non-formula cells here have been turned blue, and all the formula cells remain black. But how does this magic work? Let's press Alt and F11 again to return to the VBA editor. You can see that I've written a step-by-step outline of the code down here, from the top to the bottom in the same order that Excel runs the actual code up here. So we start the sub-procedure, which is this subline here. Then we check for each cell in the selection if the cell has a formula, and that's false, which means if the cell doesn't have a formula, then we change the cell's font color to VB Blue, which is Visual Basic Blue. And that is what's in here. So for each cell in the selection, if not cell.formula has formula, then we set the cell.font color to blue. And then we repeat for the next cell until it's done, which is what this next cell line does. It repeats all this loop and it goes through for every cell that we selected. And finally, we show a message box that reads non-formula cells turned blue. And that's represented by this code here. Message box, open quote marks, non-formula cells turn blue, close quote marks, and it shows VB information because that's the type of message box that we're using. And finally, we've got to tell Excel that that's the end of the subroutine with this end sub. Now, if all this is new to you, you can check out the description for a link to learn more. Now we'll go back to Excel with Alt and F11. I'm going to extend the selection now to include these header rows. In fact, all this table here, including the top header rows and the side headers as well. Now I'll bring up the macro dialog box with Alt and F8 and run this macro again. Now you notice that it's actually done more than we want. It's turned the actual forecast text and all of these headers into blue, but we don't want that. So how do we make sure that the VBA code only highlights numbers? In level 4, we're going to rewrite our VBA to make it better. Our last macro highlighted numbers, but it also highlighted text. Our new macro will only flag actual numbers. Press Alt and F11 to open the VBA editor. We're in sheet 4, so we need to scroll down to where it says modules, and we'll choose the L4 module to open the code module. And we'll see there's a bit more code than before, but don't worry, because I've actually written out an explanation of how this works, and you can get a copy of this workbook with all that code in the link below. Now the key difference here is that I've added a selection of special cells, Excel cell type constants, and Excel numbers. So that line here, which we'll see if I scroll back up, this is the actual line of code that's inside the module. That line just chooses cells that are numeric constants and it ignores text. So the other difference is that instead of just highlighting numbers VB blue, we can actually choose the RGB, which is the red, green, blue of the color we want to change to. So in this line here, we're setting the font color to be RGB 3336255, which happens to be a blue. I'll show you in Excel if I press Alt and F11 and then click in the drop-down menu for color, then go to more colors. I can change the red, green, and blue attributes to say 33, 36, and 255, and that's the blue that we've selected, but you can pick any other color you want. Say we'll go for green, and we can change the slider up here. Just copy the number 9, 2, 3, 3, and 4, 1 into the code, which I'll go back to in here. Just choose your red, green, blue values that you selected before. So I go into all of this kind of code and these concepts more in my online course. So check it out if you're keen to learn VBA automation. But let's go and test this out in Excel. So I'll switch to Excel with Alt and F11, and then I'll select the whole range here, including the headers, and press Alt and F8, then choose the level 4 macro and click Run. And this time we see just numeric constants that are highlighted, including this one here, which should have been a formula like this, but it was hard-coded as a number. So this is an improvement on level 3, but it still doesn't identify those pesky little constants like this 25,000 here that's just buried inside cell C8. How do we deal with those? In level 5, we're turning pro. We have a user form that lets us choose whether to format the current selection or the entire worksheet, and whether we want to highlight only the top level numbers or go deeper and look for hidden embedded numbers to highlight in yellow, just like with this sneaky little 25,000 that just keeps popping up all over the place. And by the way, I've coached thousands of professionals to leverage Excel VBA for one-click automations just like this. So if you'd like to turn tedious tasks into instant wins, check out the link below. Now let's get back to the tutorial. I'll press Alt and F11 to enter the VBA editor, then click on the level 5 code module. And there's a lot of code in this, so there's too much to explain for a short video. But if you'd like to find out how this all works, do leave a comment in the description below. And if there's enough interest in this, I'll make an in-depth explainer. Now, having said all that, you can get this code by downloading the workbook from the link in the description below. Let's go back to Excel with Alt F11 to see how this works. First, select a range, then press Alt and F8 to bring up the macro dialog box. Now select the level 5 macro and run it. You'll see the user form pops up. If we want to apply formatting to the current selection, we just leave this option on. If we want to apply it to the whole sheet, then select the second option. So I'll just leave it current selection. Then decide if we want only the top level numbers to be shown, or if we want to show any embedded numbers, like the hidden 25,000. So I'll choose this option, then click OK. It says formatting completed, and if you wish to undo, run restore backup. Immediately you can see that this cell is highlighted in yellow, as are these cells. And what that means is that it's picking up a hard-coded constant, in this case 25,000, but for these forecast cells, it's picking up this 1, 2, 3, and this 4 here. So these cells have just got numbers in them, no formulas, whereas these cells have a formula that has a hard-coded constant or more inside. And this cell particularly has that little extra 25,000 that could throw off your calculations if you're not aware that it's been hard-coded. But that's not all. This Pro VBA can also show both inter-sheet references in green and external links in red. So what do I mean by that? If I click in this cell, you'll see it references sample 2, which is this sheet down here. And so we want that to be highlighted in green text. And this cell, you'll see it refers to an external workbook with financials here. And so we want this to be highlighted in red. So I'll select the same range, press Alt and F8 to bring up the macro dialog box, run the level 5 macro, choose current selection and any embedded number, click OK. And you'll see, in addition to this yellow, we now have green highlighting where it refer to sample 2, and red highlighting where it refer to the external workbook. And for convenience, I've prepared this color scheme to show that we have numeric constants highlighted in blue, plain formulas in black, intersheet formulas in green, external links in red, and hard-coded numbers with a fill color that's light yellow. And of course, in the VBA you can change any of these codes for different RGB values, and you set these numbers in the VBA configuration section at the top of the VBA. So when you double click into level 5 code, you'll see that there are RGB values for each of the input font, formula font, intersheet, external link, hardcode fill, and hardcode border. And so that gives you the ability to customize this. But now we have a different problem. Our VBA code isn't built into Excel, so if you wanted to use this code but to run it in different workbooks, you'd need to copy it to each other workbook that you want to use it in. Or maybe there's a better way. Well, let's see in level 6. In level 6, I'm going to show you how to make the user form and macros available to you whenever you open Excel. You see, our VBA code isn't built into Excel, so it won't be available in other workbooks unless the file is open or you copy all the VBA code and the user form to every workbook you want to use them in. But that's a hassle. So what's the way to make this simpler? We're going to turn to something called the Personal Macro Workbook. Think of it as a personal code vault where you can store VBA code that automatically loads when you open Excel, so it's ready to use immediately. Press Alt and F11 to enter the Visual Basic for Applications editor, the VBA editor. Now I'm going to scroll up in the project window and look for this file. It's called VBA Project Find Constants in Excel. I'll close the rest of the folders and you'll see it's the only project file available. Now if we had a Personal Macro Workbook, we'd see another VBA project called personal.xlsb. So let's go through the steps of creating our own Personal Macro Workbook. We'll head back to Excel. Now you could either press Alt and F11 or just click on the Excel symbol here. And down here you'll see there's a button. It says no macros are currently recording. Click to begin recording a new macro. So we'll click that button. So up here it's asking us for a macro name. Just leave it at macro1. Down here it says store macro in Personal Macro Workbook. And you can see there's a drop down menu that lets you select new workbook or this workbook, but we want Personal Macro Workbook. And when we start recording, I'll just click on any cell like C2. The first thing it does is actually creates the Personal Macro Workbook for us. And then when we stop recording with this button here, and then go back into the VBA editor with Alt and F11, you'll see there's a new VBA project down here called personal.xlsb. We can expand that folder and see there's objects inside it. So there's sheet 1 and this workbook, there's 2 objects there. And then expand this folder for the modules and we'll see module 1. So that's just been created. I'll double click on it. You can see here macro 1, which we just recorded to select range C2. Now we don't need this macro, so I'm going to delete this by selecting it, just as text, and pressing backspace. And now we have our Personal Macro Workbook. Just make sure to click Save to save it. Now we'll head back up to the VBA project called Find Constants in Excel. I'll collapse this folder and expand the Forms one so you can see Form Format Options. That's the form we want to copy and put into the Personal Macro Workbook. So I'll right click this and just show you what it looks like with View Object. You see this is the form we want to export. And to export it, we right click and then click Export File. Then choose a place to save the file, click Save, and then we'll scroll down. And anywhere inside this folder structure, it could be on the VBA project, or it could be on the folder or any object. Just right click and Import File. Then we choose the form that we just exported and click Open. I'll open this folder and you can see there's a form in the original workbook and also in the Personal Macro Workbook. Next, we want to export this module. It's called Format Selection Level 5. So I'll right click on it and click on Export File, save it. Now head back down to the Personal Macro Workbook. I'll right click on Modules, or it could be anywhere in that folder structure. Then click on Import File. Then I'll select the file we just exported, which is the level5.bas. And BAS is just a Visual Basic file. So I'll click Open. And now we'll see that there is this module in the original workbook, the same identical module inside the Personal Macro Workbook. And we can double check to see the code that's inside by double clicking, and you'll see that's all inside this module. Now another way you could do it is to actually copy and paste this. So we select the text, press Ctrl A to select all, press Ctrl C to copy, and then paste it wherever you want to. But if you export from the original workbook and import, you'll know everything's there. Now we don't need module 1 here, so I'm going to right click on it and remove the module. And it asks us, do you want to export the module before removing it? We'll click no. And that's the same as deleting the module. And finally, remember to click on Save to save the personal macro workbook. Now head back to Excel by pressing Alt and F11. And you see there's an important note I've written here to enable Trust Center settings. So before we run the VBA code from the personal macro workbook, we'll need to enable access to the VBA project object model. Now that sounds very complicated, but the reason this is needed is because there's a sub-procedure called backup active sheet that can rename the backup sheets code module. And if we don't enable Trust Center settings to do this, it won't work and it will create an error. So to do that, we'll click on File and then go down to More and find Options. Then we'll click on Trust Center and Trust Center Settings. Now I've got to select macro settings from that sidebar. I've got to make sure that this trust access to the VBA project object model is selected. So usually it's not selected for safety reasons. And to run this macro, you've got to enable it by trusting access. Now click OK and OK again. And now that's complete. How do we run our code? Well, I'll go to sample 1. So we could press Alt and F8 to bring up the macro dialog box. But then you have to select the correct macro to run. In this case, we'd probably want to run this one in the personal macro workbook. And you could select personal macro workbook to narrow down the selection, but that's still a bit of a hassle, not very user-friendly. So what could be better? Let's find out at the next level. In level 7, we'll make it super easy to run the macros we just saved to our personal macro workbook. And when we're done, we'll have a custom menu on the Excel ribbon like this with 3 controls. The first is to format the selection. The second is to reset the formatting, and the third is to restore formatting from a backup. Now bear in mind that this code might not always work as expected, so make sure you keep your own file backups, especially for mission critical work. So here's how to add that cool custom menu. So head up to the ribbon and then right click on any of these tabs, then click on Customize the ribbon. Now on the right hand side you see all the tabs listed out. What we want to do is introduce a new tab. And I'll click on this and then move it all the way up to the top. So it's positioned before home, but you can place it anywhere you want to. Next, I'll rename this and I'll call it Personal Toolbox. Then click OK. And I'll click on the group and then rename that to Formatting. And click OK. And now we need to choose commands from macros. Choose this one, click Add. You'll see it's added that. I'll choose this one, click Add, and this one, click Add. So these are the 3 personal macro workbooks that we just added. And back over on the right hand side, we can select that first one and rename it. So this is the format selection macro. I'll just call it format selection, and I'll choose a suitable symbol and click OK. And then this one, reset formatting, I'll rename that just to say reset formatting. And I'll choose this eraser symbol and click OK. Then for the final one, I'll click on that and click on rename. And I'll rename this one restore backup. And I'll choose this symbol and click OK. Then I'll click OK here. And you'll see there's a new tab. If I double click on this, you'll see format selection, reset formatting, and restore backup. So now this personal toolbox will be available anytime you open your copy of Excel for desktop, and we can click on any of these buttons to run the appropriate macro. Let's try this out. I'm going to click on sample 1 and select this range. Then I'll click on format selection and apply it to the current selection. And in terms of hard-coded detection, I want to detect embedded numbers. So I'll click OK. And it's done the formatting, so I'll click OK again. And we can see blue highlighting for constants and yellow for these little sneaky embedded numbers like this 25,000. So we can click on Restore Backup to bring it back to the original sheet. Now you notice it can't be undone, so decide if you want to continue or not, and if you do, press yes. So this sheet has been restored from the backup. Alternatively, if you just want to clear a specific section like this, you can select that and then click Reset Formatting and click OK. So it's reset the formatting just for the range we selected and nothing else. So this gives you finer control over your highlighting. But custom formatting is only the start of what VBA can do. Here's another macro I built with VBA. It's called Quick Clear. You select a range and with just one click, you clear every single number but leave all the headers and formulas intact. This uses a button on the worksheet, but you could also add a custom menu to your ribbon like the one we saw in level 7 of this video. And that's the real power of VBA. It lets you build practical tools right inside Excel. You can automate reports, rename files, send emails, and create dashboards, opening up a whole world of automation. Now, VBA won't solve every problem you have, but it can handle countless repetitive tasks, and so it will free up hours of your time. Doesn't that sound good? Well, here's the problem. Most people get excited about VBA and then they dive in, but then they quit at the first hurdle because it feels so different from Excel. So here's the choice. You can either try to learn VBA by yourself, or if you want to learn VBA without the headaches, check out my online course, Excel Macros and VBA School. It's got a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot, and over 500 professionals have already transformed their Excel skills with my help, and you can be next. The link is in the description below. Or if you want to see more VBA in action, check out the next video. It shows how the Quick Clear macro works, so you can instantly clear input data but keep all headings and formulas intact. And the best part is you get the actual file to download so you can use it right away.